Let you know when. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live reality game Survivor 46 recap for episode several. What's up, Lauren?
Hey, how's it going? How'd you
Wait,
like the several episode?
you're supposed to tell me the time when I say what's up, Lauren.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so white.
Just something new I've learned, I guess. Yeah.
Damn.
I think that might have been one of the best episodes we've seen yet of this season.
I think so. I think in general, like, spoiler alert. Cole and I talk about all these episodes as they happen, regardless. It's just the first time we're doing a podcast.
Live Reality Games has their draft. Me and Malone have our own fantasy draft of Survivor 46. I have Q and Tevin still left on my team. Who do you have, Malone? Remind me.
I have Kenzie and Liz left now because I just lost Tim.
Pretty good episode for you, other than losing Tim.
Yeah. It could be worse. Could be worse. But I think like in general, I've been a little higher on this season than most other people I've been talking to, and I think this is like one of the best episodes. So I'm glad that you liked it as well.
I thought the premiere was great. I was kind of down on 2, 3, and 4, but since then I've been quite happy with the direction the season's going. I think the cast is pretty stellar across the board generally, so I'm pretty happy. Let's get into talking about this episode. We did before we even got into the challenge, before we got into the split, we see everyone has merged. What do we think of some of these early dynamics? We see Venus immediately going aggro on Soda for writing her name down when that just wasn't the case.
Which is so perfect. And like obviously it ended up like happening anyways, kind of like the conflict between the two of them, but I was so disappointed when Charlie came clean. I thought that would have been so funny just to keep them pitted against each other. But like, I mean, it worked out anyways. Yeah, I think it's well, we see it again later with Maria kind of spelling it out for Venus that, you know, she is kind of putting people off with the way she's going after them like that, and
then Venus immediately being, no, it's her ego that's saying that.
So perfect. So perfect.
People now, it can't be, I'm not the problem. It's everyone around me. Some interesting, though she gets credit for this play, so good for her. The mayor of Ponderosa.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Like, it's almost like they're letting her have it, if that makes sense. Like, that feels like the attitude that I'm getting from everyone else, where it's kind of like, you know.
Yeah, Tevin very quietly whispering no, but not vocalizing it or anything like that.
Yeah. And I think they're content with letting her feel like she's, you know, making some moves and getting some control, when everyone's really kind of like, well, okay, Venus, you can have a little fun, but I don't think anyone is taking her seriously yet.
Yeah, I really don't think so. Though everyone is kind of like, oh, she's like very social. I don't think she's very social at all.
No.
I think that's just kind of the poverty label living rent-free on every young woman's head. Speaking of Charlie coming clean, do you think this was the right move for him? Or do you think Q was right in pulling Charlie aside and being like, no, this is bad. What are you doing?
I think like with most things with Q, he's right, but it's not that big a deal. I feel like that's most of these conversations.
Yeah,
and like he seems to be like he reminds me a lot of myself yelling at the TV every time people are making these moves. Whereas like in the actual game, it's like, well, you know, you don't have to tell them that.
I actually don't hate the move from Charlie. Clearly, Venus seemed to think there was still something there, or maybe she'd just run out of options of people to talk to at that point, and did approach him later on in the episode and be like, hey, listen, I know you voted for me, but I still want to work with you. I don't know if that would have happened if it had eventually come out that Charlie voted for her and he just didn't tell her. I don't think it's like definitively a bad move that's worth pulling someone aside and being like, get your shit together. But I think Q might also just be a little bit used to playing with Banu, so every mistake is
Yeah.
just bigger.
Yeah. He's seeing the world through the Bonu glasses now and just needs to, yeah, which is, I think, a little understandable.
Yeah.
Um,
Then everyone goes to bed, and we see a quick, brief glimpse of Ben waking up, having a panic attack, and Kenzie comforting him. What did you kind of think of this moment?
yeah, it's a nice moment in Survivor, right? Um, it's one of those things that like in an old season I would have found very intriguing and kind of like the main part, like the main like focus of the episode and thing I remember the most. But then everything in the new era just seems so phony to me, if that makes sense.
I
Like, do
get
you kind of
that.
feel that too?
They're especially like Ben and Charlie tying everything back to like rock and roll or Taylor Swift is definitely something. I
Yeah,
do think that their characters specifically this episode maybe get a little bit more fleshed out. I actually
yeah,
thought that I liked this moment more because it did eventually tie back into the vote, where I think
yeah,
he
yeah,
probably stays here to some degree because of that connection he formed with Kenzie.
yeah. The I think Survivor's first Panic Attack Alliance. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think like it I think it was good for kind of developing um, Ben a little bit more and make giving him a little more of a dimension further than like just the metal guy. Um, I think what like killed it for me a little bit was like the whole like Kenzie being like, it's Survivor, like he's my competitor, but you know I'm such a. There's so many persons like, yeah, we know. Like,
I think kind of tying it back to like the game rather than just letting it be that human moment is kind of unfortunate. I do think that's more on the editors than anything. They
oh
have a
yeah,
lot of footage
definitely.
they can put in, and that's what they kind of choose to highlight. I do think that like obviously, like this is the sort of good social gameplay that you want to see, which is just being an empathetic human being.
Hmm.
Um, good on Kenzie for that. And then we get to the challenge where it's the new era, so we have to split them up immediately after getting a merge. I don't think we've really even like they said the merge has happened, but we've had like two fake merges now, uh,
Yeah,
which is just
yeah. Well, I mean, we're on episode 7, and we've never had a tribal with more than 6 people. Like,
yeah.
sure, everyone was there last time, but only 6 people were on the block, kind of thing. So,
To me, these are essentially just swaps, especially since they've kind of gotten
yeah,
rid of the concept of swaps. And I do think that like there is the possibility of people getting swap screwed, but I don't think that's what we see here from either of these two teams, where the people who should have been swap screwed seemingly are okay out of all of this. Um,
yeah,
Also, interestingly enough, we basically just got tribal divisions along the mergatory lines, where it's the same group of 6 that were vulnerable at the last vote or whatever. Now, I guess plus Tevin, and then the other group has Tiff added to it, though she was kind of with the purple group already last time as well. So, an interesting split here. What did you think of the challenge?
you know, it's a challenge. I thought it was they did something good with it, because it is, it's a pretty standard, stand here till you fall down challenge. But I like the banner. I thought it was a lot of fun.
A little bit of
Um,
flashbacks to like the Reuben sandwich moment of David versus Goliath, and a little bit more of like some lightheartedness in the challenge, which was cool.
yeah, I think that's good. Like that's genuine, like you know, social content. I think that's what makes Survivor great. So, yeah, like when you the first thing that I thought of when you said, "How do you think the challenge was whatever," but that's because I wasn't paying attention to the challenge. I was paying attention to like the people interacting, which is what I enjoy about Survivor. So yeah, I actually really enjoyed that portion of the episode, not really like linking it with the challenge so much.
One thing I thought was funny as someone who has like been around the live reality game community a little bit and had to run one of these seasons or a few of these seasons, I do think I would bet that the one-legged idea was just something that they threw in because they were short on time. They were like, wait, this is running way too fast. We have to split these people up into 2 different tribes. They only have like a single day to figure this out. Like, what are we gonna do here? And they're just like, all right, everyone needs to drop in the next 5 minutes, so have them stand on one leg, go.
Yeah, definitely got that vibe for sure. I think they definitely might have been pulling from the Survivor Calgary playbook for
All right,
that
now
one.
do this weird pose. All right, now you pull use one arm, and
Yeah,
you make do with what you have when you're running short on time, for sure.
yeah.
We get a shout out to Jelensky, and not only the episode title, but the challenge here. Q tries to play a game that clearly no one understands the rules of, and
That was the first time Charlie's ever done anything that didn't make me roll my eyes.
he just trolls the shit out of Q.
So
Like, oh,
funny.
yeah, excellent stuff. We see Kenzie and we see Maria come out as the winners of this challenge. Let's kind of talk about one tribe at a time, one group at a time. Let's talk about this disaster group first, which is the Soda, Liz, Maria, Charlie, Tevin, Venus group. It really does feel like if there were just a normal merge episode, it probably would have been one of these 6 going home. Theoretically, maybe Q on the other side. But it really did feel like everyone who was kind of at the bottom and in danger ended up over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the most part, yeah. Which is, I think, why it probably fell back into that Venus versus Soda kind of thing, because it was like it's just an easy thing to point to and say like, "Wow, there's something's happening over here." And I think that's kind of why everyone else was content with letting that go, because they didn't feel comfortable. Whereas, I mean, Venus, if it could be told to her face that she's being voted out, and she'll still push for whoever she wants. But yeah, I feel like most of the people that were in this group kind of felt like they were like, stepping on eggshells, and so I think it's not surprising to me that it's like this previously aired bit of beef is kind of they kind of let that take control.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, props to Maria and Charlie here for just sitting back and letting them blow each other up.
Yeah, definitely. I think Maria especially this was a really good episode for showing where she's at. I think it's the first time that we see that she's like is down with the 6, the Journey 6,
More
which
than
is
him, presumably, even though he didn't even bother telling her about it.
yeah, like way more obviously. But then on top of that, you have at separate points in this episode, Tim saying that Maria is the person he trusts the most. Tevin saying Maria is someone that he trusts a lot. Charlie saying that Maria is is the person that he trusts the most. Like that's a significant portion of the game saying like, what's going on? I need to talk to Maria, which is obviously a good place to be in until it's not. It's just a question of
seems like no one really has caught on to that yet either, though, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's the only person who's outright said, "Oh yeah, Maria's my number one." I don't even know if that was true, which was Tim.
Yeah.
Because like I can't picture a scenario where she is actually his number one, and they don't find a chance to talk and have him fill in her about like what actually happened at the journey.
Yeah.
That just feels like maybe he was lying to them because he didn't want to commit to it, which I think is kind of Tim's problem in general, and we'll get to that later. It's just his total lack of wanting to commit to anything at all, other than I guess I'll be with my original tribe.
Yeah. I see you're reading my notes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The vote does turn to Soda here, rather than go on to Venus. I want to know what you think about this move from I guess who was the one who voted? I think I missed it. Who was the one who voted for Venus with Soda?
I don't know.
Because it was 2-4. Someone was left out of the loop, or maybe just threw on like a vote in case of like shot in the dark or something like that.
Right.
But seemingly, someone was left out of the loop here from this group of 6. Hopefully, we'll find out next time. But I guess the group does eventually decide, hey, let's take out Soda here instead of Venus. What do you think of this move?
It makes sense. It's almost a no brainer. Venus is someone who clearly lacks social capital, um, and so I think like taking her out seems like a wasted opportunity, especially in a small group when you have people kind of cut off from, uh, maybe some of their allies. So out of the two
She's
of them,
gonna put a target on her back at some point anyway.
exactly like and I think someone said it explicitly. Like Venus is a known entity, whereas people are still trying to feel Soda out. It seems like a no-brainer to me that Soda is going to be the one who's the target. Um,
I think it's an interesting choice for Tevin here, just because seemingly Soda was still tightest with Tevin, whereas he clearly had no relationship with Venus at all. But it does allow him to get closer to Charlie and Maria, I think, pretty significantly here.
yeah. I wonder if it's like this is like signifying Tevin like moving more towards that six rather than like keeping this original core he had. Do you think?
Yeah, and I think it seems like everyone in that six is like super down for that six, like ride or die for that six. And then we see a few other sort of people like close to people in the six, but not directly included. Like we see Kenzie, we see Ben, we see Charlie. And then Tim just cuts himself out entirely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Rough move, Tim. That's not what I drafted you sixth overall for.
Yeah, anyway, modern day Exile Alliance aside, um, let's move over to the other tribe and talk about it a little bit. We have Tiff, Kenzie, Hunter, Ben, Q, and Tim. We have the entire Yanu 3 stuck together again. And then we have one Siga Hunter, or one Nami Hunter, and two Sigas, Ben and Tim. Do you think there is anything Ben or Tim here could have done to win the Yanu 3 over and take out Hunter here instead?
Ooh. I think it's. I think possibly. I think the biggest problem is that Q is the one who's really, as we saw, making the demands. And Q is also the one who has the most reason to protect Hunter. Um, because I wouldn't even say Hunter is like his meat shield. I think it's just like he is like identifying, the certain.
In and wants to play the game with.
Yeah, yeah. And I think he's kind of identified like a group of kind of power players that he wants to move forward with, which is, I mean, it's more, I guess, like Lion's Hyena than Meat Shield, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, I think it's a tough battle when it's more than just tribal lines, and it's kind of like, it's more of like this like meta alliance almost. Do you find it interesting that there's like everyone is still like pretending to push this tribe thing, and there seems to be like a group in the know and a group that's not in the know?
I think that's very good for the group in the know, and I think
Definitely.
I think it's pretty obvious that there's some different levels of Survivor players on this season, where we get people who clearly know how to play the game and are putting out there what they want to put out there, but they have these kind of schemes running in the back. And then we have people who are just like, no, I need to stick with my tribe, or no, I need to stick with this one person, or anything like that.
Yeah,
I do think it's interesting that I don't think Ben could have flipped it onto Hunter, but I do think that Tim didn't have to go here if he had played it smarter.
Oh, 100%.
I think he probably could have flipped it onto Ben pretty easily, just by saying, hey, we took out and I guess that they took out Siegel last time, right? Because they took out Mo.
Yeah.
I still think he has a way of solidifying himself with this six and being like, hey, whoever you want to take out, let's do it. I'm with you guys all the way, 100%. And actually finally commit to that group. But he's like, no, we have to take out Hunter because Siga, I guess. Like there doesn't seem to be like a really good reason for him other than Hunter is a threat. which is entirely why this six got together.
Yeah, I think he kind of misread the room a little bit, which is a little odd because he had been doing a decent job of kind of like seeing things so far. I feel like, um, but you know, when you have uh, someone who you're kind of allied with Q coming to you and say, "Hey, we need to vote out Hunter," and you say, "No, no, no, not," or no, and he says, "Sorry, we need to vote out Ben." Um, and you say, no, 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 we need to vote out Hunter. When you know that Q is close with Hunter, you know that Q is close with the other two people who are not in this conversation, and you've eliminated the one other target, that means the only person left to point at is you.
You're pointing directly at yourself at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of unknowingly Venused himself, except this time it actually bit him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's interesting about Tim's gameplay in general is I don't think anyone really ever felt close to him except for Ben. And I think that was more because people were perceiving that Ben was close to him. I don't think he ever actually like put himself out there and was like, "Hey, yeah, I am close to you. I want to work with you." He just like would cautiously agree with people, and then go against it in conversations with them all the time.
Yeah, I felt like he played very safe, which is not going to really get you anywhere in the new era. I don't think. I think.
Now, these people want to play fast. These people really,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think especially when he showed clearly that he was thinking strategically a lot of the time. So you can't just like disregard him as like a Roxroy or a Gabler or someone who's just kind of like, old school survivor, whatever. He showed that he was like in it and playing, but he just couldn't commit to anyone, which obviously makes people not trust you.
yeah. Because if you're
And
not committing to me, who are you committing to? Clearly, you're committing to someone because you know how this game works. But
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
no one. He was committing to no one. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. At some point, you got to pick a side.
We do go into a very emotional tribal council between this group, and it is kind of interesting to contrast these two tribal councils where this tribal council seems very open. Everyone's talking like, "Hey, this is why you should keep me," and talking up like, "Hey, this is the connection I have with you. This is like how I feel in this game right now. This is why I think we can work together." And then the other tribal council is everyone pretending like it's Charlie when they all have this master plan to get out one of their former tribe members, which is interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I think they took a little page out of your book there a bit with the crying blind side.
Hey, yeah.
Or the patented Cole Parker cry side. Yeah, I thought it was like
Anyway, go watch episode 9 of Survivor Calgary.
it's a really good one. Yeah, I think it was interesting because it's like I don't know. I think it was genuine. I think like
For sure.
they definitely felt emotional about it, but it's not something that like we really saw like a build up to. So it felt a little weird in some ways.
Build up for the Yanu people has been the whole season. Clearly, they have been absolutely through it, and I get that. The build up for Ben was, I think he's still kind of. I think the fact that he had a panic attack out there is probably weighing on him a little bit more than he's like immediately letting show, and he's worried about like it potentially like affecting his gameplay or like how people will perceive him, or even the fact that how people will perceive him on national television.
Right.
And so I think in that way, even just like thinking about it and talking about this connection that he's developed with Kenzie because of it, that might be why like these emotions come up and right. Kind of we don't necessarily see that build is because he's trying to push it down a little bit.
Yeah. I think it's I don't know. It was a weird one because it was like, yeah, you can feel the emotion there, but I think nobody really knew where to place it or like where it was coming from, which is cool. And then it felt kind of weird when Tim went, and it was like, well, I feel like people don't like have these connections with Tim as much,
But I mean,
or at least it didn't feel like.
that's to some degree, I think, why he went, is because you see Ben able to form these connections with people, even in these difficult situations. And Tim, in a perfect spot, lucks out and goes on this journey where a 6 is formed that might end up running this entire game. And he's like, no, I'd rather not.
Yeah, or yeah, I do, but also, well,
Exactly.
it's it's very wishy-washy, which um, never comes off well.
I think
Um,
the lesson to learn from this, from Tim's boot especially, is never say no to an alliance. And also, if you have not said no to an alliance, act like you're wanting to work with those people. Um,
yeah,
I think what was interesting to me, actually, going back to the other tribe briefly, was Venus talks to Charlie and is like, "Hey, yeah, are you still down to vote Soda, or are you still down to vote Tevin?" And he's like, "No, actually, I'd rather not. I'll just play my shot in the dark." And she was like, "Okay, cool. I'll vote for you then." And like clearly some stuff went on behind the scenes so that they both um, voted Soda. I don't know if it was entirely because of Venus or if it was more the relationship between Tevin and Maria pushing Charlie in this direction. But like, if someone comes up to you and says, "No, I'd rather play my shot in the dark than work with you," that should send alarm bells like going berserk. Like you should know, oh hey, crap, they've already said my name and just don't want to tell me.
yeah, I don't. The only thing I could think of is maybe Charlie thought it was Venus.
I think at that point he did, because he hadn't. I think the timeline goes, um, Charlie and Charlie and Soda talk, then Tevin and Maria talk, then Charlie and Venus talk, then Charlie and Maria talk and like figure it out.
Right.
At least how it's presented in the episode. But I think
Yeah.
at that point he was like, "Oh, okay, Soda wants to vote you, and you seem like a nightmare to work with. So my alliance member just told you to your face, like, hey, this is what I need from you in order to be a good alliance member," and you're like, "No, actually." Um,
Right.
yeah. If
Okay.
it's
Yeah. My impression when I was
this in the background while the Maria Maria was trying to tell Venus like, "Hey, this is how you come across to people." But
it's very funny.
get a few like Grim
um,
Halpert moments this episode. It was pretty good.
yeah, this was a good Charlie episode for sure. Um, yeah, I think yeah, the impression I got in that conversation with Venus was him trying to make her feel safe by saying like, "Oh no, it's me," like I'm playing my shot in the dark. Um, maybe hoping that would like make her feel better. Maybe not thinking it to that extra step of like, well, she's gonna know that she's number two if I'm safe, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was kind of the feeling I got from it, which is maybe not the best move, but um, yeah, definitely a
Some
weird
interesting takeaways
conversation.
across the board for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I guess what do you think happens from here? Because we have talked a lot about this 6, the Journey 6, the +1 alliance, whatever you want to call it. But one of them just got voted out by 4 of them.
Hmm.
Maria is going to come back and be like, "Hey, I thought we had this 6. What happened to Tim?" What do we think is going to kind of be the aftermath? Do you think they're going to be able to smooth it over? Do you think that Maria is going to hold on to a grudge for this? Like, I don't think she knew that her and Tim were close until he apparently told other people, but not her. But also, it was an alliance that she was putting at least some amount of faith in that was immediately like put on the burner.
Yeah, I think it's going to really come down to like how close Maria really did feel to Tim. I have a feeling she's smart enough to know that she could like pretty quickly make stronger bonds with the other 4 than Tim ever did. So I would be surprised if she does anything, you know, against that alliance, I feel like she's probably gonna be pretty smart about it.
I
But
think
it's hard to say.
I think she's someone who's capable of noting that oh hey, they told me this thing. They still want to work with me, but there's something here that I need to like keep a hold of or keep note of. And she's clearly tight now with Charlie and Tevin and Liz, so she's got options for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Liz, she seems like she's with it sometimes, and then other times she just does stuff that is like,
I didn't even bring my
why are
bag.
you
I didn't even bring my
saying?
bag to try with.
Yeah, it feels almost deliberate because, like, when we see her confessionals, she has a good grasp on the game. You know, decent enough. She's maybe not totally in on like the six versus the tribe lines,
In these group
but
conversations, she really doesn't know how she comes across though.
yeah, like she gets it, but she doesn't get anything else.
Which are entertaining Survivor players to watch. Like the ones who are like, oh yeah,
Absolutely.
I know this game, but like they clearly have flaws to their gameplay that are working against them.
Hmm. Yeah,
I
it's very weird.
Yeah, I'm personally not a big Liz fan. The whole like I own 12 businesses and I could buy this island if I wanted to sort of attitude is doesn't rub me the right way, but you know what? That's okay. We can't love everyone on the show, and I think that's good for the show to put people out there who don't always rub people the right way at home.
100%. Uh, yeah, some of my favorite players are my least favorite players. Like that's what
Coach,
I mean.
man.
I get it. I'm a villain. um, yeah, I think Liz is I think we're getting just enough Liz. I think
Yeah,
we're getting like the perfect amount of Liz so far.
we're
Um,
getting Liz throwing her hands up in the air, being like, "Hey, I didn't bring a bag," but we're not getting Liz talking about how she's running the entire game and
yeah,
like
exactly.
we watched Liz at that in that group, and it seemingly she was just laying on the beach the entire time, and people would periodically come up to her and be like, "Oh, hey, this is the plan now," and she's like, "Okay, cool, whatever." I wanted to
Sounds
take
yeah,
one
that sounds
photo
great.
forever. Like, where did that come from? But
Yeah. Um, did you catch what I believe is the first ever use of sus in Survivor?
oh no, I didn't. But that, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. Had
Yeah, that was Soda saying that Venus is sus of herself. Um, yeah, so I think we're starting to break into the Among Us era of Survivor.
we're gonna get people calling each other imposters soon. Like, well, we see in the preview for next episode, we see Hunter pulling out the spy nest. So we're back in the Tony era of Survivor, I guess. Um, why would Hunter need a spy nest?
Seems so out of character.
It really does. Like Hunter is seemingly trying to put himself out there as like this like Aussie type who doesn't really like care or know about the game, but he's there to provide and for the adventure of it all. And it's seemingly working pretty well. Where people are like, oh yeah, you're not a huge like strategic threat, but he's clearly thinking and clearly has like a brain on his head. Um, but then Spy Nest out of nowhere, what's going on? Maybe he's just getting bored. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I feel like there's enough going on that it's hard to like make a prediction for next episode. Um, and who knows? It could be like a funny little thing that he ends up like just kind of, you know, accidentally falling into, kind of hyped up a little more because of the preview. But yeah, it seems weird, and it seems like it wouldn't be a good move for him in any way, like in any circumstance. But who knows? Maybe he's like kind of getting a little high off of having that idol and kind of burning in his pocket,
He doesn't play
knowingly
it.
not playing it,
Yeah.
um,
What did you think
which
of
is
that?
very
Clearly,
tough.
clearly I'm pro playing your idol when you don't have
Hey,
to.
look, I believe when I played the idol that sunk my entire career, I believe the words out of my mouth were "smoke them if you got them." So I'm with you there.
I think
Yeah,
I quoted you when I played my idol poorly as well. So I think we're on the same page there. Smoke them if you got
yeah,
them. You'd rather go home, or you'd rather play the idol, not have to use it, and all of a sudden not have a target on your back anymore because no one's worried that you have an idol, rather than go home like Jem did a few weeks ago, where
Mhm.
you think you're running things, and all of a sudden you go to your very first tribal council, and bye bye.
yeah, yeah. That's rough. Like I feel like obviously if he misplays that idol, huge blunder. Like not only does it look bad for his read of the game, but that's gonna put like, whoa, Hunter's doing stuff into the discussion.
Well, and at
Um,
some point, people are going to turn at him like, oh, that's a major physical threat. He basically won his tribe every single challenge in the pre merge. We're going to have to vote him out. And to have a secret idol that no one knows about, very, very clutch in that sort of scenario.
yeah, definitely. I think I think when you think about it, that it almost makes it understandable how he was like brave enough not to play it, because it like playing that would sink him so fast.
And he does seemingly have like a really good connection with Q. And from the little we've seen, it seems like he has a pretty good connection with Tiff and with Kenzie as well. I do think that is like of those three who I think could have a big impact on the rest of this merge and the rest of this game. I do think Hunter is probably closest with that three of anyone.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about Tiff and Kenzie right now? Because they're like obviously in not a terrible position. Like no one's really looking at them, but they're not part of the six.
I think they're in a
Or I
really
guess
Tiff is part of the
Tiff
six.
is, yeah,
I still think they're in a really good position because I still think we're seeing some of this like lingering Siga Nami beef popping up. We're
yeah,
still seeing Nami versus Nami beef popping up where clearly they all want to vote each other out. And laying low is good. And while Kenzie isn't in the six, she does have that connection with Ben, which I think will probably be clutch for her. And like we've seen everyone talk about it in the pre-merge, like how easily she makes connections with people. I don't think she'll have any issue connecting with some of these other people. As I actually think we're probably getting set up here for them turning on Q and him going here pretty soon, where we're seeing sort of the Q sort of narrative of like, oh, I'm the mob boss, I control everything, into a blind side. But
yeah, yeah, yeah. The Mad with Power arc.
it's a classic, but a good one.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've spoken about my thesis on how Kenny was kind of the perfect Shakespearean tragic hero in Gabon. So yeah, that's one of my favorite arcs in Survivor. Um,
Every
and
good season
yeah,
has at least one. Yeah.
yeah, and I think you're right in that they're definitely leading up to it. Another kind of arc that I thought was going to have a bigger, finale than it ended up having was the Venus versus Soda. Do you kind of feel that as
I
well? That
mean,
it
yeah,
ended up being a little lackluster?
we did see sort of the conclusion of it. And I think we're going to see echoes of it for the rest of the season, where um, the rest of Venus's storyline is going to be her mistakenly taking credit for this move. And whether she rides all the way to the final three off thinking that she ran the game, or her torch gets snuffed because she blows herself up into this big threat that didn't necessarily deserve it. I do think that relationship with Soda and her is still extremely important to the way the rest of her game goes, and she's clearly a very big and important character on this season.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. I was looking at it more as the head-to-head when really it is more of an over.
It's
The
like
story.
it's the story is Venus versus the rest of her tribe, and Soda was just one of them to build that up, I think.
Yeah. I think
I
that's
think
maybe a good.
Heaven and Venus is definitely an interesting relationship to follow over there too. And I
Yeah.
think that will only grow deeper and more hostile. more aggressive towards each other. But
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, Venus Part 2 and then Venus 2 coming later this season as the saga continues.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Now
That's a good point. I wasn't thinking about that.
we brought up our draft at the very beginning, but the LRG folks here also have a draft, and they also require that we name 2 MVPs of this episode. Now, it only makes sense for us to name MVPs that come from each of these 2 separate groups.
I think that's fair.
I think you could easily justify being like, oh yeah, it's definitely Charlie and Maria, because they sat on their ass and did nothing, and somehow everyone loved them.
Yeah.
I think I would lean more towards Maria here. She seemingly was the one who made the call, tried to build something with Venus, even when Venus wasn't hearing it. I think she's set up extremely well for the rest of this game, so I would probably give an MVP to Maria. I'm curious who you think from the other side might deserve a shout for player of the week.
I agree definitely with Maria. Like that seems like a no-brainer. From the other side, it's maybe a little more difficult. I think Kenzie maybe has a shout for forming, little extra bonds.
And I mean, Q did vote out Tim when he didn't want to there. So I think Kenzie makes some amount of sense there too. Kenzie is closer with Ben than Q is. Tim was closer with Q than Kenzie, and Tim goes.
Yeah. I think we're starting to see, when the narrative early on was, Banu spilling the beans that Kenzie's in control, and everyone on the other 2 tribes being like, well, Kenzie's going to be this big threat at the merge. We'll be, keeping eyes on her. And the fact that she hasn't really kind of popped out of the page yet as being a target is good.
It was interesting to see. I thought this was actually a very good move from Q, where he goes to tribal council and is like, yeah, this was the girl that held us together. And is like trying to like very much like shove her in the spotlight after this like very emotional conversation from Ben, and just being like, see how good she is, look at what she's doing, in this sort of transparent to the audience, but I don't think it was transparent to anyone out there. I thought that was a very good play by him, and maybe he's trying to build that up a little bit, or maybe that was fully genuine and he didn't even think of it at the moment.
It's hard to say. It seems like everything Q does is extremely calculated. He's obviously like very, very much a couple steps ahead in a lot of places. I didn't kind of clue in right away that that's what he was doing, but I'm sure we'll have a confessional next episode of him explaining that, because that seems to be kind of how things go.
Like, how could Q do this to me? Why are you making me out to be this big threat?
Yeah, I'm sure she is gonna know. She's gonna kind of clue in right away as well. Yeah, it's interesting on the other side, because you could also say Tiff has done well.
Very well. She's in the middle of the 3 who are presumably at this point in a lot of are in a very good spot. It's similar to the sort of very, very bad tribes that we've seen before that luck into falling into the middle of a war between the other 2 tribes and come out on top.
Yeah, I think it's getting to the point where it's like, come on, everyone. like
we've seen this before. Like, catch up. Eventually, the intentional Matt saying will just become the correct strategy to do on Survivor. But
yeah, I wish that had made its way to Survivor Calgary. Well, I looking at a 2-time winner.
Mostly 2 tribes. Oh, I guess. I mean, it worked out for Craig, kind of.
Yeah,
Belligerent tribe gets wiped out, and he pushes it all the way to final 3.
But I mean, post swap, he had a bit of a power tribe there.
Certainly.
Yeah, the real Nats thing was Voss tribe.
True. Very true.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it is. And then like, if we're talking like specifically this episode too, I think like Hunter having the gall to keep that idol hidden and not worry about it in such a small group is like such a huge move. It's almost one that's going to be like maybe retroactively he becomes like a star of the episode, if that pays off, in a week or 2.
Yeah, where he doesn't. Maybe like next week he goes out with it in his pocket, and you're like, okay.
Wow,
Maybe he's gonna
so
look
much for that.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm fine with either. I'm happy if you make the call.
I. Oof, it is so tough.
I think
Yeah,
it's for sure one of those two. I think.
yeah, I think if we're gonna get specific to this episode, I think I would go Hunter on that side.
Cool.
Because I think he navigated this little situation pretty well. Whereas I think everyone else that we kind of talked about is it's kind of been a slow burn.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's setting up chess pieces where Hunter's just got his queen right there, ready to go, and he's holding on to it. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Malone. Thank you for taking in this episode with me, and thank you everyone who joined us for this. Remember to keep watching Live Reality Games' recap, and especially keep watching Survivor Calgary if you are. We've been having a great time this season. I think All Stars is really living up to the name. And yeah, thank you very much. Anything you want to say before we take off, Malone?
You summed it up beautifully.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.